Greetings, welcome to Podcast Hubungan Internasional. This podcast is brought to you by the Department of International Relations Universitas Gadjah Mada. I'm your host, Diah Kusumaningrum. Today, we are truly honored to have a very special guest, Dr. Jose Manuel Ramos-Horta. We all know him as the former President of Timor Leste, the 1996 Nobel Peace Prize Laureate, and the chairperson of the World Movement for Demokrasi. Dr. Ramos-Horta, good afternoon Dili time, good morning Jakarta time. Thank you for generously taking the time to share your thoughts and expertise with us. How are you today?
Very well, and I thank you for the opportunity. I particularly thank Hoki Madasara for recommending me to you. I've been to Georgia already 2 or 3 times. Last time at the Gadjah Mada University, I think was November 2 years ago.
Dr. Ramos-Horta, having held various leadership positions in Timor Leste, you have a first-hand experience in setting up a new country's path towards democracy. Can you please share with us what's it's like to be in such a position?
Well, it has been for many years that upon independence in 2002, we understood that there was a need first for national reconciliation, healing the wounds of the society, also reconciliation with Indonesia, normalized relations. And fortunately, the leadership of the two sides, Timor Leste and Indonesia, understood very well the necessity, the importance, overriding importance of normalizing relations, and that's possible only through dialogue and reconciliation. And for Timor Leste, although for many in our society was painful, literally you could say everybody endorsed it, political leaders, common people, etc. And that has to do also a lot with Mr. Xanana Guzman's leadership. As you know, Xanana Guzman is well known to Indonesians. He spent 7-8 years in Sipinang, where he told me when he learned more to appreciate Indonesians, to love Indonesian people. So under his moral leadership, his authority, it was relatively easy to lead our people into two-track reconciliation process within Timor and with Indonesia. Same time, building the institutions of democracy. In democracy are not only regular elections, in our case every 5 years, but you have to have a functioning institutions, dynamic institutions, a dynamic society, political parties, etc. Well, I'm not, Indonesia is one of the great examples, of how it is possible to fast-track from dictatorship to function democracy, but also how challenging it is. And we know from current examples going on in the United States that democracy is a process, is difficult to achieve perfection.
Yes.
It's ongoing, and we just cannot give up or desperate because in the course of the journey, in the process, there are setbacks. So far in the world, I have been to 135 countries, and I study almost each and every one of them. There are some democracy perfections in the world. If you go to Norway, to Finland, to Sweden, this you can say perfection. Maybe New Zealand, so all the rest you have imperfections in many ways, in the judiciary, in the way the society deal with each other, deal with the many different parts of the society. There is still disparity, a lot of disparity in Europe, a lot of exclusion in many countries in Europe, intolerance and growing. So we cannot say democracy is perfect when at the same time they might have a perfect elections, but what it about to the participation of everyone, everyone feel as part of the society.
Since you've pointed at the quality of democracy, I'd like to bring up Freedom House's assessment that in the last 14 years, there has been a decline in the quality of democracy worldwide. Now, as the chairperson of the World Movement for Democracy, what's your take on this? I read that your movement puts emphasis on the activism governance nexus. Can you please elaborate on this?
Well, yes. If you look at the ongoing battles in the United States, well, that is a perfect example of declining of democracy. You look at the last 4 years, but at the same time, you see an extraordinary movement of people, all walks of life, all ethnicities, spiritual, religious beliefs, engage actively in saving democracy. And I look at the battles the American people fight against Trumpism, against racism, against anti-Muslim, anti-immigration. So the battle to preserve democracy, to consolidate democracy goes on. Even in a country like the United States, that has been a beacon for many people, a country of idealism. I lived many years in the United States, traveled across the country. I know the US, I would say, very well. I have the greatest respect for many right now in the US Congress. I know them personally. And I had one Kennedy as my intern here a few years ago. And he then ran for Congress, and Joe Kennedy. And so I have the great respect for these people. So it doesn't, Donald Trump has done enormous damage to multilateralism, to the United Nations, to transatlantic relations, much damage to relations with many different countries. But it is, is a passing phenomenon. It's a passing phenomenon because I see that the people on the good side who believe in humanity, who believe in solidarity, who believe in justice, of embracing of all different cultures and beliefs, well, they are actually winning the battle, at least this phase of the battle in the United States. And the same goes for Europe.
Yeah.
Well, Europeans who saw World War II, are they going to allow fascism to prevail? No, again, yes, there has been retrogression, all these years in Asia, in ASEAN, in Southeast Asia. But I believe that these are passing phenomena. Like, remember, in Europe, in the 60s, they dealt with extreme political ideologies as well, of a different kind. Maoism, in France, in Belgium, in Germany, In Japan, they dealt with them. In Italy, extreme ideologies of the left that use violence, terrorism, and but then they were defeated by two instruments. One, defeated by precision intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Precision intelligence. Second, defeated by their own ideology, in the sense, people in Europe, first they remember World War II. Second, they live in an affluent society, in freedom. Do we want to go to left-wing fascism? I call it left-wing fascism, left-wing intolerance. So they don't. And I also look at the Indonesia experience. When I'm asked about Indonesia, I say, well, why extreme versions of Islam espoused by some groups are not gaining ground much in Indonesia? Well, because is a very open society, very open country. Indonesians, they have more than 100 TV stations, I think 30,000 radios or more. And so people, and then you have endless social media with all its problems. Indonesians, by and large, are well informed, and they know the benefits of an open society, of a tolerant society. So very difficult to sell to Indonesian people some extremist ideologies, whether a political ideology of the extreme right, extreme left, or puritanic, radical extremist version of Islam.
Yeah, I agree that it's very difficult to sell those kind of extreme values, but we see that it's being sold here, and some are buying it. And again, referring to the term that you use, this is like the daily battle that we have to engage with if we believe in democracy. Now, this battle that you refer to, in the literature, we refer to them as nonviolent resistance, right? Yes. And the timing of our conversation couldn't be any better, because yesterday, October 2nd, we celebrate not only Mahatma Gandhi's birthday, but also the International Day of Nonviolence. And then in the 1990s, we saw a spike of research on nonviolent resistance, almost all of them highlighting how nonviolence can be a very effective tool in bringing down dictators, even the most ruthless ones. Not everyone believes in nonviolence, and you are among the faithful few. So would you kindly share your thoughts on nonviolence? What is the importance of nonviolence, both in bringing about democracy and in safeguarding democracy?
Well, last night, I was on a local TV conversation, and in talking to our people, particularly young people, I spoke for 1,000th time. Mr. Shanana Guzman, the last few weeks, he been traveling around the country. I have joined with him a few occasions. He has been preaching, so to speak, preaching the same theme, and that is non-violence. And I told the young people, I can understand that sometimes you people are frustrated, you are angry, but do not surrender, do not become hostage to your anger, to your hatred. Because one death that you cause, it's one life that will never come back and may haunt you. And it will be on your CV, on your records. If you are a young person, I say focus on studying, study and studying. To be helpful to yourself, your family, your village, your town, your community, you have to equip yourself with knowledge. And there are many inspiring examples in Timor Leste and across the region of how people survive in the midst of extreme violence, poverty, without surrendering to violence. And I have to say, in the face of violence perpetrated by state institutions, what can you do? Are you going to fight back in an asymmetric battle? Well, it's suicidal, it's irrational, and the greatest strength between us who do not want violence, who don't agree with violence, is that is precisely this, that we are not using violence. And eventually those who are on the other side using violence, they themselves will be defeated by their ideology, their belief. They will be tired out. They cannot win, because the vast majority of the people in any society do not preach violence. Violence is always preached by a minority. So the issue is that, in the face of the violence, do not think that by you not using violence, you are losing. No, in the end, you will survive. If you use violence, you will be killed. You will lose your higher moral authority, moral ground, lose the moral ground. So that's what the conversation that goes on and on. But at the same time, we cannot just keep on preaching about peace and non-violence, because there are concrete situations why people are angry, they are fed up, and that means they have to see the peace dividends, freedom dividends, democracy dividends that deliver to them in better education, in a better life. If democracy do not deliver, then democracies fail, and that's when it gives rise in history to fascism. It gives rise to fascism, gave rise to fascism in Europe. It give rise in fascism in third world countries.
Yeah.
Because demagogues, we make promises. They make promises, we will resolve this. Well, and then they don't resolve, because governing is not so simple.
Yeah. So, there's the moral reasons for engaging in nonviolence, but there are also pragmatic reasons to engage in it, that eventually nonviolence works and it gives us, the legitimacy to carry on our goals. As somebody who are like the underdogs in terms of like the power parity against the states or other, armed group, the more we use violence, then the easier it is for them to dismiss our goals as illegitimate. But we cannot really talk about democracy and nonviolence without touching upon peace building. You mentioned earlier peace dividend, democracy dividend. And we cannot talk about peace building without acknowledging our violent past, including the violent episodes in Indonesia, Timor Leste's relations. I have to be honest here and say that the Indonesian national curricula have not engaged with the topic openly. I hope you don't mind me asking this, but how are the events remembered in Timor Leste? How are they taught in school? In an ideal world, how do you think both nations should address this painful topic?
We established at the beginning, even before independence, with support from many international institutions, including from South Africa, we set up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. They did a superb, thorough work. Compiled tens of thousands of testimonies in terms of pages, tens of thousands of pages of testimonies from victims and from perpetrators, and produce massive volumes in 4 languages, in Tetum, Timorese national language, in Bahasa Indonesia, Portuguese, and English, so readily accessible. This is part of our process of national healing and truth and reconciliation. And then subsequently, we established a joint commission with Indonesia, mandated by the two presidents, President of Indonesia and President of Timor Leste, who established the Truth and the Friendship Commission. Of course, the mandate, the terms of reference were different. Both sides were careful in that the terms of reference were only to look at institutional responsibility and not individual responsibility. In terms of the conclusion of the second commission, Truth and the Friendship, the conclusion was the Indonesian Defense Forces, the Indonesian Army, accept institutional responsibility for much of the violence in 1999. It was obvious the 1999 violence that took place before, during, and after the referendum in 1999, result of failure of the Indonesian army to, because the Indonesian army demanded, as part of the negotiation for referendum, to be in charge of security during the referendum, before and after. And this was failure because it was not able to control the gangs, the militia gangs. So this was accepted. That was a failure, institutional failure. But we have made everything, because on our side, myself, Sanan, and all other Timorese leaders, we understood that Indonesia itself, starting in 99, 98, 99, was beginning a very difficult, complex, painful process of transition from the dictatorship to democracy. And we, the Timor side, we would not be contributing positively to Indonesia's transition to democracy if we had agreed with some, including Amnesty International and some friends in Washington and elsewhere, who are calling for an international tribunal to try those responsible for the crimes of the past. We said no. Indonesians, one day, they are the ones on their own watch, their own clock, decide to bring about, because the tragedies of Indonesia is not only Timor and Indonesia. 1965, 66, Tanjung Priok, Aceh, Papua, and all of that. But this, leave it to the Indonesian society, the Indonesian people. Not for Timor, not for the UN. So we decided, pragmatically, but in our belief, that we believe Indonesian democracy will progress. And we have seen the progress. What I said 20 years ago is true today. Indonesia changed beyond recognition from the 98, 99 to today. And justice can wait. Justice in the prosecutorial way. We are talking about restorative justice. We're talking about recognition of victims. Yes, we on our side we say we will look after our victims, the survivors of the war, those who are victims of torture and are traumatized. So we recognize all of that. We have done numerous initiatives in looking after the widows, the orphans, and we know it's not enough because it's never enough. But then we leave it to Indonesia to look after its own victims, because many Indonesian military lost lives here in Timor, thousands of them. And we leave it to Indonesia to deal with Tanjung Priok, with Aceh, with Papua, and other human rights violations occur throughout Indonesian history. We are not going to deal with that. We are dealing with our concrete situation. And in this regard, I would say we have been largely successful.
Oh, wow. That's a lot to take in. Thank you very much, Dr. Ramos-Horta. We all know that it takes a big heart and a lot of courage to be able to move beyond prosecutorial justice and opt for restorative justice. To some, reconciliation may be a process that helps former enemies overcome the violent past so that they can live together again. Now, given that most citizens of Timor-Leste and Indonesia do not live together, what would restorative justice between the two nations look like in an ideal world?
Well, we have a particular experience in Timor-Leste. In Timor-Leste, you don't find a single Timorese who would say, I hate the Indonesian people. I hate Muslims. And that partly has to do with the fact that in the course of 24 years of our struggle for independence, never once the resistant leadership encouraged, incited violence against Indonesian civilians. And there were thousands in Timor at that time. Never we demonize Indonesian people as people. Never we demonize Indonesian Muslims because they are Muslims. Never. Because in many situations around the world, I don't mention names, and I'm totally against it, they demonize the other side. So when independence was coming, it was we didn't have to change our discourse. After all, we are not demonizing any longer Indonesian people. So we never created a mindset in the country, a culture of hating, demonizing other countries, other religions. And the fight was always a political one. And it was never religious, it was never ethnicity, and so on. So it was easier that way to tell our people. We embrace the Indonesian people. So here we have many thousand Indonesians living here. Many new arrivals for the past few years after independence. Many didn't live. And in the course of these 20 years so far, since independence almost, not a single case of a violent incident involving Timorese and Indonesians here in Timor. And even Timorese who collaborate with the Indonesian side, the so-called pro-autonomy. Yeah, time to time you hear when the political tensions hit up, you hear some people, bringing up the collaboration between some in Timor with Indonesia. But never one single case of active discrimination. Many previously pro-Indonesian Timorese are in the parliament, they are in the government, they are in the administration, they are in business. So we don't have this, fortunately, Timorese people are incredibly, forgiving. The pain is still there, you cannot erase it, but they very much understand. But at the same time, it's because Indonesian leadership after 1999, 2000 also have been very wise in not turning its back to Timor-Leste. Indonesia could have said, you want independence? Well, okay, fine. Forget about us. No, Indonesia understood that Timor-Leste need Indonesia support, need Indonesia understanding. So beginning with Gus Dur, a great human being, in 2000 he came here informally. And then with all of the Indonesian leaders, Ibu Mega, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, now Jokowi, everyone understood the need to help Timor-Leste. And the greatest trade relations we have is with Indonesia. Many thousand Timorese still studying in Indonesia. The travel between Timor-Leste and Indonesia is simply amazing, mind-boggling, the number of Timorese who travel to Indonesia. If you look at Indonesian official statistic, Timor-Leste, I think, is number 4 total in visitors to Indonesia. Well, this would not have happened if there was hatred, lack of reconciliation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramos-Horta. It's been a very insightful and moving discussion. It seems that you, alongside your fellow countrymen and countrywomen, have managed to do your collective homework in terms of reconciliation, of moving on from the violent past. I do hope that I and my fellow Indonesians can also step up to the occasion and complete our homework. And now, to sort of wrap everything up, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to leave our audience with?
Yes, maybe briefly is to say, like almost everything in life, there is no shortcuts. There are bumps along the road. I do never look things with where the black and white. I do not see right on only one side and wrong on another side. I never bought ideologies. I was one of the few in my country during the struggle that never believed in ideologies of the left or the right. And so when the Soviet Union collapsed and the Marxist-Leninism was discredited, well, I was one of the few who did not feel too embarrassed about it because I never believed in that. In same time, I'm never like too optimistic or too pessimistic. You have to, I look at the current situation today of the retrogression, the setbacks of democracy as passing phenomena. And the important is that, yes, those who believe in democracy, in freedom, rule of law, human rights, continue to fight in absolute non-violence way. Use your brains rather than guns. I always tell our young people, in our situation, when we fought for independence, we fought because we believe in it. We fought for democracy, for human rights, because we believe in it. But we didn't fight with dogmas. We fought with brains. So when you fight for democracy, you fight with your brains. Don't fight with brute force. If you see difficulties there, well, try to outmaneuver those in power. And today you have many more instruments to fight than in the past we had. One single person, young person, 17 years old, can mobilize millions if he or she picks up an idea and use social media, whatever that's available today that was not available to us. And so I think for young people listening, yes, use your brains on how to defeat the other side that primarily use force.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Ramos-Horta. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. Take care and hope to see you soon in person.
Thank you.
Also, a heartfelt thank you goes to Ms. Oki Madasari, who's connected us with Dr. Ramos-Horta, as well as to a group of students in our Introduction to Democracy Studies, who has been doing all the background research on the topic. In alphabetical order, Aditya Wibowo, Alfredo Putra Wijoyo, Alifa Arda, Brigita Kalina, Jok Marlin, Dania Salsa, Kanaya Ratu, and Nandita Putri.